Before dawn on August 7, 1944, a German general stood near a forest road in Normandy, listening to engines that were not his own. They were not tanks, they were not trucks, they were aircraft. The sound grew louder, faster, and then suddenly the sky itself seemed to fall apart. Within hours, hundreds of German tanks would be burning wrecks, and one of Hitler's last hopes in the West would be crushed in full daylight, watched helplessly from the ground. To understand why this moment at Mortain became one of the most terrifying experiences for the German army in World War II, we need to rewind just a few days. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below. By early August 1944, the situation in Normandy had turned sharply against Germany. The Allied landings on June 6th had survived every counterattack. The hedgerow fighting had been brutal, but American forces were finally breaking through. On July 25th, Operation Cobra shattered the German front west of Saint-Lô. Entire German units were smashed by massive air bombardment. The US First Army poured through the gap and began racing south and west. This breakout changed the entire shape of the war in France. General George S. Patton's Third Army, activated on August 1st, moved faster than German commanders believed possible. American routes that had been quiet for years suddenly filled with American armor, supply trucks, and infantry columns. German defenses were thin, confused, and badly damaged. Many German units had already been fighting for 2 months without proper rest or replacements. Adolf Hitler reacted the way he often did when reality turned against him. Instead of pulling back and saving his forces, he ordered a counterattack. He believed a bold strike could still change everything. On August 4, 1944, he personally approved Operation Lüttich. The plan was simple on paper and disastrous in reality. German armoured divisions would attack west from the town of Mortain, push through avalanches, and cut off Patton's Third Army, which was now spreading across Brittany. The man tasked with carrying out this order was General Oberst Paul Hauser, commander of the 7th Army. Hauser was a veteran, wounded before, experienced, and deeply uneasy. He knew his army was exhausted. He knew fuel was short, tanks were worn down, and Allied air power ruled the skies. Several senior officers warned that the attack had little chance of success. Still, the order was absolute. The attack would begin before dawn on August 7th. Mortain itself was a small town in southern Normandy, surrounded by rolling hills, forests, and narrow roads. It was not ideal tank country. Worse still, the Americans already held key high ground nearby, including Hill 317, overlooking the area. Units of the US 30th Infantry Division were dug in. They were tired but alert. Unknown to many German commanders, American intelligence had already intercepted German radio traffic. Ultra-decrypts warned that a major attack was coming. The surprise Hitler hoped for was already gone. At around 12:30 a.m. on August 7th, German tanks began moving forward in the dark. Panthers from the 2nd Panzer Division, Panzervorforts and assault guns pushed along narrow roads toward Mortain. Infantry from the 17th SS Panzergrenadier Division followed behind. In the darkness and early fog, the Germans achieved some local success. They pushed into parts of Mortain and briefly disrupted American lines. But this was not 1940, this was 1944, and the battlefield belonged to the Allies once the sun rose. As the first light of dawn broke over Normandy, American forward observers began calling in reports. Smoke columns marked advancing German armour. Radios crackled with urgent messages. Within minutes, calls went out to the US 9th Air Force. The weather, which had often saved German troops before, now betrayed them. The skies cleared just enough. At airfields in southern England and newly captured bases in Normandy, pilots scrambled. Among them were pilots of the Hawker Typhoon, one of the most feared aircraft on the Western Front. The Typhoon was originally designed as a high-speed interceptor, but it found its true purpose as a ground attack aircraft. Armed with 4 20mm Hispano cannons and 8 RP-3 rockets, it was built to destroy tanks, trucks and artillery at low altitude. For the German soldiers below, the first attack came without warning. Typhoons roared in at treetop level, their engines screaming. Rockets slammed into roads, fields and columns of armour. Tanks exploded. Half-tracks flipped over. Trucks burned. Survivors scattered for cover, diving into ditches and hedgerows. The psychological effect was just as powerful as the physical destruction. The sound of the Typhoon's engine, a deep and rising roar, became a signal of death. German soldiers learned to recognize it instantly. Many later said that once they heard it, they knew they had only seconds to react. General Hauser and his staff tried to maintain control, but control was slipping away minute by minute. Communications broke down as radio vehicles were destroyed. Unit commanders could not move without drawing air attacks. Columns that tried to advance were caught in the open and shredded. The very roads meant to carry the German spearhead became killing zones. Between early morning and late afternoon on August 7th, the battlefield around Mortain became a nightmare. Approximately 450 Typhoon sorties struck German forces in the area. Pilots flew multiple missions each day, refueling and rearming as quickly as possible. Ground crews worked non-stop, loading rockets and patching bullet holes, sending aircraft back into the air within minutes. German anti-aircraft fire was heavy but ineffective. Light flak guns fired constantly, filling the air with black bursts and tracer rounds. But the Typhoons flew too fast and too low. The Luftwaffe, once the terror of Europe, was almost absent. Fuel shortages, pilot losses, and Allied air superiority had reduced it to shadows. A few German fighters appeared briefly, but they could not stop the onslaught. On the ground, German officers watched helplessly as their attack dissolved. Tanks that survived the first strikes became trapped behind burning wrecks. Fuel trucks were destroyed, leaving armoured units stranded. Infantry units were pinned down, unable to move in daylight. Every attempt to regroup drew fresh attacks from the sky. One German officer later described the experience as feeling hunted, not fought. The Typhoons did not simply pass over once. They returned again and again, circling, striking and disappearing, only to come back minutes later. The constant noise shattered nerves. Men stopped thinking about orders and started thinking only about survival. By midday, the scale of the disaster was becoming clear. German armoured losses were staggering. Post-war analysis suggests that up to 175 German tanks and armoured vehicles were destroyed or disabled during the fighting around Mortain, many of them by air attack. Whether every claim was exact or not, the impact was undeniable. Entire battalions were effectively wiped out as fighting forces in a single day. Meanwhile, American ground forces fought stubbornly. On Hill 317, surrounded US troops from the 120th Infantry Regiment held out under constant attack. They were cut off, low on food, water and ammunition, but they refused to surrender. Their radio transmissions helped guide airstrikes directly onto German positions. Every hour they held made the German situation worse. By the evening of August 7th, Operation Lüttich was already failing. The hoped-for breakthrough to Avranches never came. German units were shattered, scattered, and running low on everything. Hauser requested permission to withdraw and reorganize. Hitler refused. He ordered the attack to continue. The next day, August 8th, brought more of the same. Allied aircraft dominated the skies again. American artillery units added their fire, turning roads and crossroads into deadly choke points. US reinforcements closed in from multiple directions. The German offensive had no momentum left, only losses. What made the defeat even worse was its timing. While German armour was being destroyed at Mortain, Allied forces to the east were advancing rapidly. Canadian and Polish units pushed south toward Falaise. American forces moved north. The German army was slowly being pulled into a massive encirclement. For General Hauser, the horror was not just the destruction, but the knowledge of what it meant. The failure at Mortain opened the door to disaster. While German forces were tied down in a pointless attack, Allied armies were closing the trap behind them. Within days, the Falaise pocket would begin to form, threatening to encircle much of the German army in Normandy. On August 13th, with no choice left, Hitler finally allowed a withdrawal. By then, it was too late. Tens of thousands of German soldiers were trapped. Equipment was abandoned on roadsides. Tanks were blown up by their own crews for lack of fuel. The once powerful German army in the west was broken as an organized force. The events at Mortain marked a turning point in modern warfare. Never before had air power been used so decisively and so directly against armoured formations in daylight. The Typhoon pilots did not just support the battle, they shaped it. They stopped an offensive, destroyed massed armour, and proved that tanks without air cover were dangerously vulnerable. For the German soldiers who survived Mortain, the memory stayed vivid. The sound of low-flying aircraft, the sudden explosions, the sense that nowhere was safe. Many veterans later said that the fear of Allied fighter bombers was worse than artillery or infantry combat. For the Allies, Mortain confirmed that the balance of power had permanently shifted. The combination of intelligence, ground defence and overwhelming air support was unstoppable. The German army could still fight, but it could no longer recover from major losses. And for the German general watching it unfold, August 7, 1944, became a day of realization. The war in the West was lost not in a single moment, but in hours of fire from the sky. At Mortain, in just 7 hours, the last gamble collapsed under the roar of 450 Typhoon rockets, leaving burning tanks, shattered units, and the clear understanding that the end was now only a matter of time. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.